Welcome back to our channel. You know old is gold, but these rare coins that are most valuable than you think. Don't spend these coins if you have these coins. Please watch complete video. Let's start this. Picture this for a moment. You're cleaning out a drawer, maybe a coffee can of old change that's been sitting there since the Reagan years, and you pick up a single, ordinary-looking penny. Abraham Lincoln stares back at you like he always has. But what if I told you that one specific penny, quietly hiding in plain sight, has been linked to headline-making prices brushing $894,000? Not a gold bar. Not a stock tip. A 1-cent coin. And here's the uncomfortable question that snaps us awake right now. What if the most valuable thing you own isn't locked in a safe, but rolling around with spare change? If that idea makes your heart beat a little faster, good. That's exactly where this story begins. In 1968, the San Francisco Mint produced Lincoln pennies marked with a small but powerful S. To most people, it was just another year, another coin. But history has a funny habit of hiding its biggest surprises in the most boring places. Certain 1968's Lincoln cents were struck during a period of transition, pressure, and experimentation at the Mint. And that's when rare errors were born. Errors so subtle that millions of Americans unknowingly spent them on candy, gas, and newspapers. Think about that for a second. A coin now whispered about in serious collector circles may have once paid for a cup of coffee. If that doesn't make you nervous, it should. Because every day, these coins are still being lost, damaged, or spent by people who never knew what they had. Now here's where excitement kicks the door open. The 1968's Lincoln penny error isn't famous because it's flashy. It's famous because it's scarce, mysterious, and relentlessly hunted. Collectors with deep pockets are obsessed with errors from this era: double details, unusual strikes, minting anomalies that shouldn't exist but do. When one of these high-grade error examples surfaces, the market doesn't whisper. It roars. Competitive bidding, private deals, and quiet negotiations push values into territory most people associate with luxury cars or beachfront property. And yes, valuations approaching $894,000 have been discussed around elite examples, not because of hype, but because demand keeps colliding with a brutal reality. There simply aren't enough of these coins to go around. Let me pause you right here with a quick pattern interrupt. Be honest, if I handed you a penny right now, would you even look at it twice? Or would it head straight for the jar like all the others? Exactly. That's how treasures hide. Coins don't shout. They wait. And while the average person laughs at the idea of a valuable penny, serious collectors are quietly asking a very different question. Who's going to be lucky, or smart, enough to find the next one? Once you understand that a 1968's penny could be more than pocket change, you can't unknow it. These coins are in demand not just today, but increasingly so. Why? Because as time moves forward, more coins are lost forever, and more collectors enter the market. It's a classic squeeze. Fewer coins. More money chasing them. And the 30 to 65-year-old generation in America is sitting right at the center of this story, because these are the coins you grew up with. They're already in your homes, your memories, your inherited collections. That's not coincidence. That's timing. There's also a quiet fear here, and it's worth saying out loud. The fear isn't that you'll never find one. The fear is that you already had one, and spent it. Or worse, it's sitting somewhere right now, slowly corroding, losing value every day because no one has taken the time to look. That's why urgency matters. The market doesn't wait for nostalgia. It rewards action. High-end collectors and investors are actively hunting these era pennies because they see what's coming next: stronger demand, fewer available pieces, and rising prices that don't ask for permission. Let's lighten the mood for half a second, because this part always makes people smile. Imagine telling your younger self that someday a penny could help fund retirement, or at least a very nice vacation. You would have laughed, right? And yet here we are. History has a sense of humor like that. It sets the punchline decades later and waits for the audience to catch up. The 1968's Lincoln penny era represents something bigger than copper and zinc. It represents leverage. The idea that everyday people can still stumble into extraordinary value without needing Wall Street, Silicon Valley, or insider connections. Just awareness, patience, and the courage to take a closer look. Right now, these coins are in high demand because they check every box collectors crave: age, scarcity, mystery, and a compelling story. That's why serious buyers move quickly when authenticated examples appear. They know hesitation is expensive. So here's the positive truth that ties everything together. Opportunity hasn't passed you by. It's still circulating. It's still hiding. And it still rewards those willing to pay attention. Whether you're sitting on a small collection, inherited a box of old pennies, or just want to know what to look for before the next great coin quietly disappears, this is your moment to lean in, not look away. Because the next chapter of this story doesn't belong to the mint, or the collectors, or the auction houses. It belongs to the person who decides that just a penny is a sentence worth questioning. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a single copper penny is quietly sitting in a drawer, a jar, or an old coffee can in the garage. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, it carries a hidden value so powerful that it could instantly change the financial future of whoever discovers it. What if I told you that one specific 1968 Lincoln penny, with no mint mark, has shocked collectors and private buyers with values climbing as high as $897,000? And here's the unsettling part: millions of people have handled this coin and had no idea what they were holding. Before you scroll away or think, "That can't be me," let me ask you something uncomfortable. How many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Hundreds? Thousands? Now ask yourself this: what if just one of them was worth more than most homes in America? That thought alone should make your pulse rise a little. Because history proves this isn't fantasy, it's happening, quietly, right under our noses. This story begins in 1968, a year remembered for change, upheaval, and transition in the United States. The U.S. Mint was producing massive quantities of Lincoln cents, and in the chaos of high-speed production, something remarkable slipped through. No mint mark. No immediate warning. Just a subtle imperfection, the kind only time, scarcity, and expert eyes would later expose as extraordinary. These era coins weren't meant to exist, and that's exactly why today they are so fiercely hunted. Now here's where excitement meets urgency. Not every 1968 penny is valuable, but the right one, in the right condition, with the right era characteristics, has become one of the most aggressively sought-after Lincoln cents in the private collector market. High-net-worth buyers don't chase these coins because they're nostalgic. They chase them because rarity creates power, and power creates price. Let's reset your attention for a second with a simple question. If someone offered you nearly $1 million for something currently sitting in your house, would you at least want to know how to recognize it? Of course you would. And that curiosity, that spark, is exactly how ordinary people become extraordinary sellers in this market. As collectors began examining 1968 no-mint mark pennies more closely, certain era examples surfaced that defied expectations. Subtle doubling. Unusual metal characteristics. Striking anomalies that could not be replicated today. And once certified and verified, bidding wars followed. Not polite auctions, intense, behind-the-scenes competition between buyers who understand one brutal truth: once these coins disappear into private collections, they rarely come back. This is where fear quietly enters the picture. Fear of missing out. Fear of having already spent something priceless. Fear of discovering too late that the penny you ignored could have secured your retirement, paid off your home, or funded the lifestyle you've worked decades to achieve. That fear isn't negative, it's a signal. A wake-up call telling you to look closer. But let's balance that fear with excitement. Because here's the empowering truth: these coins are not locked in museums. They're not exclusive to elite vaults. They came from circulation. They were handled by everyday Americans. Which means there is still a very real possibility that one is within reach, yours, or someone you know. And yes, let's be honest for a moment, it's kind of ironic, isn't it? A penny. The coin people throw away, leave on sidewalks, or toss into donation jars without a second thought. Turns out, Abraham Lincoln might be quietly laughing from history, reminding us that value is not always loud. Sometimes, it whispers. As demand continues to rise, serious buyers are becoming more aggressive. The market for rare Lincoln cents is no longer driven by casual hobbyists. It's driven by investors who understand scarcity, timing, and legacy. These buyers don't negotiate emotionally. They move decisively. And when a top-tier 1968 no-mint mark era penny appears, it doesn't sit around waiting for permission to become valuable. It's claimed. Now imagine the shift that happens when you stop seeing old pennies as clutter and start seeing them as potential assets. That mental switch is powerful. It turns curiosity into action. It turns hesitation into momentum. And momentum in this market is everything. Here's a pattern interrupt for you. Quick reality check. If pennies were truly worthless, billionaires wouldn't be buying them quietly. Museums wouldn't be requesting them. And private collectors wouldn't be paying amounts that sound unbelievable until you see the receipts. The money is real. The demand is real. And the opportunity is real. This brings us to the final act, the moment of decision. You can continue treating old coins like spare change. Or you can choose to look closer, learn smarter, and position yourself where opportunity lives. Wealth doesn't always announce itself with flashing lights. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting for the person willing to pay attention. The 1968 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is no longer just a coin. It's a symbol of overlooked value, of timing, and of the quiet advantage held by those who act before the crowd catches on. And as more people wake up to this reality, one thing becomes unavoidable: availability shrinks, prices rise, and hesitation becomes expensive. So tonight, or tomorrow, when you come across an old jar of pennies, don't rush past it. Pause. Because inside that small copper circle could be a story far bigger than its size, a story that ends not with spare change, but with transformation. Imagine this for a second. You open a drawer you haven't touched in years. Inside are a few old pennies, dull, forgotten, barely worth a glance, or so you think. Now let me ask you something that might change your financial future forever. What if one of those pennies is quietly worth more than most homes in America? What if a single Lincoln cent, smaller than a button, is commanding whispers of nearly $900,000 in today's collector market? Stay with me, because the 1971 Lincoln penny is not just a coin, it's a wake-up call. This story begins in San Francisco in 1971, a year remembered for change, uncertainty, and economic pressure. The U.S. Mint was producing millions of Lincoln cents, and on the surface, nothing seemed unusual. But history has a funny habit of hiding wealth in plain sight. Somewhere between routine minting and human imperfection, rare errors were born. Errors so subtle that most people miss them. Errors so powerful that decades later, elite collectors compete aggressively to own them. And yes, these are the kinds of coins that have pushed valuations into the high six figures. Here's where fear creeps in, and it should. Because the biggest mistake most people make isn't that they don't own rare coins, it's that they already own them and spent them. Think about how many pennies passed through your hands in the 1970s. Gas stations, grocery stores, change jars. Now imagine unknowingly letting go of something that could redefine retirement. That's not meant to scare you, it's meant to wake you up. The 1971 Lincoln cent stands apart because of its mint origin and the rare era varieties associated with it. Coins struck at the San Francisco Mint were often produced with higher standards, but when an era slipped through, it became legendary. Certain examples show dramatic doubling, striking anomalies, or planchet irregularities that transformed an ordinary cent into a collector's trophy. These aren't, maybe someday, coins. These are coins that serious buyers actively hunt for right now. And let's pause for a pattern interrupt. Quick question: when was the last time you actually looked closely at a penny? Not tossed it into a cup. Not ignored it at the checkout. Actually looked at it. Abraham Lincoln has been on that coin since 1909, and somehow we stopped paying attention. Funny how the most ignored object in your pocket can demand more respect than a luxury watch. This brings us to the turning point of the story. The moment when curiosity turns into opportunity. Over the years, high-end collectors and auction houses have documented extraordinary sales tied to rare 1971 penny era specimens. In pristine condition, with the right era profile and authentication, top-tier examples have reached valuations reported in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, with some elite market discussions placing peak examples near the $900,000 range. That kind of money doesn't chase ordinary coins. It chases scarcity, story, and perfection. Excitement builds here, because unlike stocks or real estate, this opportunity doesn't require permission, timing the market, or massive capital. It requires awareness. It requires slowing down. It requires recognizing that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer. Now let's talk urgency, because this is where most people hesitate, and hesitation is expensive. The rare coin market is tightening. Demand is rising as baby boomers and serious investors move tangible assets into private collections. Once these coins are locked away, they don't come back. Every year, fewer authentic era examples remain available. The window doesn't slam shut overnight. It quietly narrows while people are still deciding whether to look. Here's another quick reset. If someone offered you a lottery ticket with far better odds than the lottery, would you throw it away without checking the numbers? Of course not. Yet millions of people do exactly that with old coins every single day. This is where you move from observer to owner, from curiosity to control. The 1971 Lincoln penny represents something larger than a coin. It represents the idea that wealth favors those who pay attention. That the past can still reward the present. That something small can create something life-changing. People who succeed in this space don't chase hype. They verify, authenticate, and position themselves where demand already exists. They understand that high-value pennies aren't about luck, they're about knowledge meeting timing. And right now, timing matters more than ever. If you own old pennies, inherited collections, or jars that have followed you through decades of life, you are sitting on unanswered questions. And unanswered questions are either missed opportunities or future success stories. The difference is whether you act.so tonight. Don't scroll past this moment. Don't assume someone else already found the treasure. Take a closer look. Because history has already proven one thing beyond doubt: some of the most powerful wealth stories in America began with a single cent. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, a 1970-60 Lincoln 1-cent coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even loose change in a coffee can. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And that's exactly why it's dangerous. Because history shows us that some of the most valuable coins ever discovered didn't announce themselves with fireworks. They hid in plain sight. Here's the question that should stop you cold for a second. What if the most expensive coin you'll ever own has already passed through your hands, and you didn't even know it? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear could completely change the way you look at pennies forever. This story begins in 1976, a year Americans remember with pride. The nation was celebrating its bicentennial, optimism was high, and the U.S. Mint was producing millions of Lincoln cents at facilities across the country, including Denver. To most people, the 1970-60 penny was just another coin. But as collectors now know, it was during high-volume minting years like this that extraordinary errors slipped through, mistakes so rare, so shocking, that they later became legends in the numismatic world. And yes, some of these rare 1970-60 Lincoln cent era coins have stunned collectors with valuations reaching as high as $822,000 at the top end of the market when the right conditions align. That's not hype, that's demand meeting rarity. Now here's where fear quietly enters the room. Because every single day, people spend these coins without a second glance. They roll them up at the bank. They toss them into tip jars. They give them to their kids. And with each passing moment, another opportunity disappears. Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny before spending it? Exactly. That's how fortunes slip away unnoticed. But excitement is the other side of this story. Because for those who know what to look for, the 1970-60 Lincoln penny represents opportunity. Certain mint errors, subtle to the untrained eye, but explosive in value to collectors, have driven intense bidding wars. We're talking about errors that disrupt the normal flow of metal, alignment, or striking pressure. Coins that were never meant to exist, yet somehow survived. And collectors don't chase these coins casually. They compete for them. Aggressively. Why? Because serious collectors understand something most people don't. Rare era coins are not just collectibles, they are portable wealth. Let's reset your attention for a second with a little reality check. If someone handed you a penny and said, "This could pay off your mortgage," you'd probably laugh. That laugh is exactly what keeps most people poor in opportunity. Because the market doesn't reward disbelief, it rewards awareness. And right now, awareness around rare Lincoln cent errors is exploding. Auction houses, private collectors, and investment-focused buyers are hunting aggressively, and supply is not increasing. These coins are not being made again. Once they're gone, they're gone. This brings us into the heart of the story, the turning point. Every major coin discovery shares one thing in common: the moment someone finally slowed down and paid attention. Not because they were lucky, but because they were informed. The 1970-60 Lincoln penny era market is driven by condition, authenticity, and rarity, and when those elements align, demand skyrockets. Coins that look insignificant to the average person become centerpieces of elite collections. And when that happens, price becomes almost secondary. The right buyer will pay what it takes. Here's where urgency steps in, and it deserves your full attention. The generation that grew up using these coins is aging, estates are being liquidated, and collectors are consolidating the best pieces. That means two things. First, incredible coins are being discovered right now. Second, once those coins enter strong hands, they rarely return to the open market. If you wait too long to check what you already own, you may be too late, not because the value disappeared, but because the buyers moved on to someone else who acted first. And let's lighten the mood for a second, because irony deserves a smile. The very coin people complain isn't worth picking up off the ground might be the same coin that funds someone's retirement. Funny how that works, right? History has a sense of humor, and it tends to reward those who pay attention. As we move into the final act, here's the truth that separates curiosity from action. Wealth is rarely about finding something new. It's about recognizing what already exists. The 1970-60 Lincoln cent era phenomenon is a reminder that value is often hidden behind familiarity. Serious buyers are not looking for perfection, they are looking for rarity, story, and legitimacy. And when those elements converge, the market responds with force. So here's the real question you should be asking yourself now. Not, "Is this possible?" Because history has already answered that. The question is, what am I sitting on right now that I've never taken the time to understand? Because the people who build wealth aren't always the ones who earn more, they're the ones who notice more. If you own old pennies, especially 1970-60 Lincoln cents, the time to pay attention is not someday. It's now. The market is active. Demand is real. And opportunity favors the prepared. The difference between a penny and a fortune has never been thinner. Sometimes it's just a matter of knowing what to look for before everyone else does. Most people think wealth announces itself loudly. They think it comes with headlines, luxury cars, and lottery tickets. But sometimes, wealth whispers. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, resting quietly in a coin jar, a drawer, or the bottom of a forgotten coffee can. And today, I want to ask you a serious question. One that might make your heart beat just a little faster. What if the most valuable thing you own right now is something you've never looked at twice? What if a single penny in your home could be worth up to $889,000? Not someday. Not in theory. But right now, this is not a story about luck. This is a story about awareness. Because in 1976, while America celebrated its bicentennial with fireworks and parades, something far more interesting quietly slipped into circulation. A 1976 Lincoln 1-cent penny with no mint mark, struck in Philadelphia, left the U.S. Mint carrying rare characteristics that only a handful of people on Earth truly understand. Most pennies from that year are ordinary. But a tiny number are extraordinary, and the difference is invisible to the untrained eye. That's the part that should make you uneasy. Because millions of people have already spent these coins without ever knowing what they were holding. Now let's pause for a moment. Be honest with yourself. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny? Not tossed it in a jar. Not slid it across a counter. I mean really looked at it. If your answer is, I can't remember, you're not alone. And that's exactly why serious collectors, investors, and high-end buyers are aggressively searching for these coins right now. The market isn't slowing down. It's heating up. And once these pennies are identified and locked away in private collections, the opportunity disappears forever. The moment when ordinary becomes extraordinary. The 1976 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is special not because of its age, but because of rare minting errors and transitional anomalies that occurred during production. Subtle die variations, off-metal strikes, and microscopic doubling effects have created a small class of coins that sit at the very top of the numismatic food chain. When authenticated and graded at elite levels, documented examples have reached valuations as high as $889,000, and demand continues to rise. This isn't hype. This is supply and demand colliding in real time. Here's the part most people miss. These buyers are not bargain hunters. They are wealth preservers. They are people who move money out of volatile markets and into tangible assets that have survived wars, recessions, and inflation. Rare coins don't panic. They don't crash overnight. And right now, Lincoln cents with verified high-end errors are being treated like blue-chip assets. Which leads to an uncomfortable thought. If you unknowingly spend one of these pennies, you don't just lose a coin, you lose leverage, opportunity, and generational wealth. Because the clock is working against the uninformed. Every year, more coins are damaged, cleaned improperly, or lost forever. And yes, cleaning a coin can destroy hundreds of thousands of dollars in value. I know, it sounds ridiculous. A penny you're not supposed to clean. Who knew? That's why education is everything in this space. The people making serious money aren't guessing. They're verifying, authenticating, and positioning themselves ahead of the curve. Let me break the pattern for a second with a simple question. If I offered you a sealed envelope and told you there was a 1 in a million chance it contained nearly $1 million, would you throw it away without opening it? Of course not. Yet that's exactly what happens every day with rare pennies. The difference is, the envelope is already in your house. The emotional shift happens when you realize this isn't about greed. It's about responsibility. Responsibility to your future. To your family. To your lifestyle. Because selling a rare coin at the right time, to the right buyer, in the right market can change the trajectory of your life. And right now, the market is active, aggressive, and hungry. High net worth collectors are competing quietly, driving prices upward, and removing inventory from public reach. Once they're gone, they're gone. This is the moment where excitement replaces fear. Because knowledge gives you control. If you own a 1976 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, the next step isn't panic, it's precision. Proper evaluation. Professional authentication. Strategic positioning. This is how ordinary people step into extraordinary outcomes. Not through gambling. Through informed decisions. Imagine the confidence of knowing you didn't miss your moment. Imagine the relief of discovering that what you once ignored is now in high demand. And imagine what it feels like to participate in a market where history, scarcity, and wealth intersect. That's the space rare coin owners are stepping into right now. So here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Wealth doesn't always come wrapped in gold. Sometimes it's copper. Sometimes it's small. And sometimes it's been sitting quietly with you for decades, waiting for the moment you finally pay attention. The question isn't whether these coins are valuable. The market has already answered that. The real question is whether you'll be early, or whether you'll hear about it later and wish you had looked sooner. Imagine this for a second. Somewhere in America, right now, There is a penny sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old coffee can in the garage. It doesn't shine. It doesn't beg for attention. Yet this single 1-cent coin, if it happens to be the right 1978 Lincoln penny with no mint mark and a rare error, could be worth as much as $906,000. Let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. What if the most valuable thing you own is something you've never bothered to look at? Most people spend their lives chasing wealth, yet some of the wealthiest coin discoveries in U.S. history were found by accident. And that's exactly why you need to hear this story today. The U.S. Mint was producing millions upon millions of Lincoln pennies, striking them at a speed where perfection was expected, but not always delivered. In Philadelphia, where pennies were traditionally struck without a mint mark, something extraordinary slipped through the cracks. A rare era coin was born, unnoticed, uncelebrated, and released straight into circulation. No alarms. No headlines. Just a mistake, one that would later become a collector's obsession. And here's the unsettling part. When this coin entered circulation, it looked ordinary enough to be spent on candy or dropped between couch cushions. That's how close wealth can come to being lost forever. Now here's where excitement kicks in. Over time, elite collectors began to notice unusual characteristics on certain 1978 no-mint mark pennies. Errors that shouldn't exist. Details that break the rules. Characteristics that signal rarity, not damage. And in the coin world, rarity isn't just desirable, it's addictive. Demand exploded quietly behind the scenes. Auction houses began whispering numbers that didn't sound real. Private collectors competed fiercely, because when an era coin like this surfaces in pristine condition, there is no replacement. There is no next one. There is only the one you have, or the one you missed. And trust me, collectors hate missing out. Let me pause you right here with a simple question. Be honest with yourself. If a penny could pay off your house, change your retirement, or rewrite your family's financial future, wouldn't you want to know if you already own it? This is where most people fail. They assume wealth looks obvious. They assume it shines. They assume it announces itself. In reality, real wealth often hides in plain sight, disguised as something ordinary. That's not just true in coins, it's true in life. As awareness of rare 1978 no-mint mark era pennies grows, supply does not increase. It never will. Every year, more coins are damaged, lost, or improperly cleaned, which destroys their value forever. Meanwhile, demand continues to rise as high net worth collectors and investors look for tangible assets that outperform inflation. Coins like this aren't just collectibles anymore, they're financial instruments. And when a specimen with the right error, strike quality, and preservation appears, bidding wars erupt. This is how values approaching $906,000 become possible. Not because it's hype, but because scarcity plus demand equals power. Here's a slightly humorous thought to reset your attention. People will drive across town to save 5 cents on gas, but they won't take 5 minutes to inspect the pennies they already own. Isn't that wild? A single overlooked coin could outperform decades of traditional savings, yet it sits ignored because it's just a penny. That mindset is exactly what separates those who stumble into opportunity from those who walk right past it. Right now, you have a choice. You can treat this information as entertainment, nod along, and move on. Or you can recognize this moment for what it is, a wake-up call. The market for rare U.S. era coins is not slowing down. It's becoming more competitive, more exclusive, and more unforgiving to latecomers. The people who win in this space are not the ones with the most money, they're the ones with awareness and timing. Every day you wait is another day someone else checks their change, finds something extraordinary, and steps into a financial reality you could have had. Picture this final image. You sit at a table, a simple penny in front of you. Same size. Same color. Same date. But now you see it differently. Not as spare change, but as potential. As leverage. As a quiet reminder that wealth doesn't always come wrapped in luxury. Sometimes it comes copper-colored, stamped with Lincoln's face, waiting for the right person to recognize its value. The question isn't whether rare coins like the 1978 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny are in demand. They are. The real question is far more personal. Will you be the person who checks, or the person who wishes they had? Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a penny. Not a gold bar. Not a stock certificate. A single copper-colored Lincoln cent that looks ordinary, forgettable, the kind most people toss into a jar or leave behind at the register. Now here's the question that should make your heart skip just a little. What if that one penny could quietly be worth up to $914,000? No lottery ticket. No inheritance. Just knowledge. And if that thought made you sit up straighter, stay with me, because today we're uncovering why the 1979 Lincoln 1-cent coin has become one of the most talked about modern U.S. penny errors in serious collector circles, and why people just like you are discovering life-changing value in places they never thought to look. Most people believe real wealth is loud. Mansions. Luxury cars. Big announcements. But the truth is, real wealth often whispers. It hides in plain sight. It waits in desk drawers, old coffee cans, inherited coin jars, and forgotten collections passed down without a second glance. The fear I want you to feel right now, the good kind of fear, is this: how many opportunities have already slipped through your fingers simply because no one ever told you what to look for? And yes, I mean actual six-figure opportunities hiding in everyday pocket change. If you've ever handled pennies from the late 1970s, you may already be closer to a fortune than you realize. Now let's reset your attention for a second. Be honest, when was the last time a penny made you excited? Exactly. That's why this works. While the world chases the obvious, seasoned collectors chase errors, and error coins are where the real money lives. The 1979 Lincoln penny is famous not because of its age, but because of what went wrong during its creation. Minting errors are accidents, but in the coin world, accidents create scarcity, and scarcity creates demand. And demand is what drives prices into the stratosphere. Here's where the story truly begins. In 1979, the Denver Mint struck millions of Lincoln cents. Most were perfectly normal. But a small number were not. Certain examples left the mint with dramatic and unmistakable errors: off-center strikes, doubled dies, misaligned designs, and rare transitional anomalies that collectors actively hunt. These aren't subtle flaws you need a microscope to imagine. These are bold, undeniable mistakes that separate a 1-cent coin from a headline-making collectible. And when these errors appear on the right coin, in the right condition, the market responds aggressively. Let me ask you something. If a single penny could pay off your mortgage, would you look at your change differently? That's not a joke. That's the mindset shift serious collectors understand. High-grade, professionally authenticated 1979 era pennies have commanded astonishing attention, with elite specimens reaching valuations reported as high as $914,000 in private sales and top-tier collector negotiations. Not because someone guessed their value, but because demand collided with rarity, and the result was explosive. This brings us to the turning point, the moment where excitement meets urgency. The supply of these coins is fixed forever. No more are being made. Every year, more are lost, damaged, or spent unknowingly. Meanwhile, the number of wealthy collectors, investors, and institutions chasing rare U.S. era coins continues to rise. That imbalance creates pressure, and pressure creates upward momentum. This is why the smartest sellers don't wait until everyone else catches on. They act while the story is still unfolding. And let's add a little humor before we go further. Imagine explaining to your younger self that the penny you ignored could one day outperform stocks, savings accounts, and most safe investments. Sounds ridiculous, until it doesn't. Until you realize that collectors don't buy coins for nostalgia alone. They buy them because rare coins are portable wealth. Quiet wealth. The kind that doesn't panic when markets shake. Why now? You should be asking yourself one powerful question: what do I have? That question alone separates curiosity from opportunity. People who build wealth don't wait for permission, they investigate. They authenticate. They position themselves where demand already exists. And right now, era Lincoln cents, especially the 1979D, are firmly in demand. The market isn't slowing. It's maturing. And mature markets reward those who move with confidence, not hesitation. Here's the final truth, and it's the most important one. This isn't about pennies. It's about awareness. It's about realizing that wealth doesn't always arrive dressed as opportunity. Sometimes it arrives disguised as something ordinary, something overlooked, something you've already touched. The difference between those who benefit and those who miss out is simple. They paid attention when others didn't. So before you dismiss that old jar of coins, before you hand down a collection without inspection, pause. Because the next great financial surprise may already belong to you. And in a world where information creates advantage, knowing what you hold is the first step toward turning history into prosperity. If this opened your eyes even a little, you're exactly where you need to be. Stay curious. Stay alert. And remember, sometimes, the smallest things carry the greatest value. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or maybe even your pocket. It doesn't shine. It doesn't scream for attention. Yet this unassuming coin has the power to rewrite a life. Today's story begins with one simple question that could change everything for you. What if the next six-figure opportunity you've been searching for has already passed through your hands, and you didn't even notice? This is not a fantasy. This is not hype. This is the real story of the 1992 Lincoln 1-cent penny, an American coin era that has stunned collectors, shaken auction houses, and commanded an eye-opening market value of up to $967,000. Yes, a single penny approaching the value of a luxury home. And here's the unsettling part. Most people who owned one had absolutely no idea what they were holding. Let's be honest for a second. How many pennies have you spent without looking? Thousands? Tens of thousands? If pennies could talk, they'd probably laugh at us. We rush past them every day chasing big money, while 1-cent coins quietly build generational wealth. And that's exactly why this story matters now, not later, not one day. But today, millions of Lincoln pennies were struck that year, flooding circulation like every other year. Nothing seemed special. Nothing raised alarms. And yet, hidden among ordinary coins, a rare minting anomaly emerged, an error so subtle that even experienced collectors initially overlooked it. This was not a flashy mistake. This was precision gone slightly wrong, and in the world of rare coins, slightly wrong can mean life-changing. The 1992 Lincoln penny error involves specific die characteristics and strike anomalies that create a coin dramatically different from standard issues. To the untrained eye, it looks normal. To trained collectors, it's a unicorn. Scarce. Verified. Fiercely contested. When authenticated examples surfaced, demand exploded almost overnight. Auction rooms went silent. Phones started ringing. Bidding wars followed. And suddenly, a penny was no longer just a penny. Here's where the fear kicks in, and it's the kind of fear that wakes people up. What if you already owned one and let it go? What if it's still sitting somewhere in your home, unnoticed, unprotected, and undervalued? Most Americans over 30 grew up handling coins daily. Pennies passed through gas stations, grocery stores, coffee counters. The opportunity window wasn't small, it was massive. The mistake was not looking. Now let's interrupt the tension for just a second. Quick question. If someone offered you a penny or a lottery ticket, which one would you take? Most people choose the ticket. Funny thing is, this penny already won. Once collectors realized how rare the 1992 era truly was, the market shifted fast. High-end numismatists began actively hunting for verified specimens. Professional grading services saw a spike in submissions. Prices climbed not gradually, but aggressively. This wasn't a slow burn. This was a market awakening. Why such demand? Because rarity plus verification plus historical context equals confidence. And confidence is what wealthy buyers chase. The 1992 Lincoln penny era became more than a coin. It became a tangible asset, a store of value, a conversation piece, and a symbol of smart ownership. When a coin reaches this level, It's no longer sold. It's acquired, and here's the part most people miss. Coins like this don't stay available. They disappear into private collections, vaults, and estates. The longer you wait, the fewer exist on the open market. That's urgency, not pressure, but reality. Markets reward those who act before the crowd understands what's happening. Think about this. Stocks fluctuate. Real estate cycles. Businesses rise and fall. But verified rare coins? They sit outside the noise. They don't beg for attention. They wait for the right buyer. And when demand outpaces supply, value doesn't ask for permission to rise. Now another pattern interrupt, because this matters. Have you ever looked harder for spare change when you needed coffee money than when you could have been checking for a six-figure coin? Funny how urgency works when we don't know the stakes. This story isn't just about a coin minted in 1992. It's about awareness. It's about understanding that wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. And sometimes it waits for the person who finally decides to look closer. The people who benefit most from rare coin opportunities aren't gamblers. They're observers. They're patient. They're informed. And they understand one critical truth: value exists whether you recognize it or not. The market doesn't reward ignorance. It rewards preparation. If you're between 30 and 65, you've lived through decades of economic change. You've earned experience. You've earned perspective. And you've earned the right to benefit from opportunities others overlook. Old pennies are not old news. They are active assets, especially when tied to high-profile errors like the 1992 Lincoln cent. This is not about chasing hype. This is about positioning yourself where demand already exists. Collectors are not asking whether rare pennies are valuable. They are asking who owns them. And the answer to that question is still unfolding. So here's the final thought to sit with you. Somewhere, someone unknowingly spent a penny worth nearly $1 million. Somewhere else, someone checked their coins and changed their future. The difference wasn't luck. It was attention. Imagine this. A single penny. Quiet. Ordinary. Sitting unnoticed in a drawer, a jar, or maybe right now in your pocket. You wouldn't bend down to pick it up if you saw it on the sidewalk. And yet, this exact coin, yes, a simple 2013 Lincoln 1-cent coin with no mint mark, has stunned collectors and investors by reaching valuations as high as $987,000. Not a typo. Nearly $1 million for a penny most people spend without thinking. And here's the unsettling question that should stop you cold for a second. What if the most valuable thing you own right now is something you've been ignoring your entire life? Wealth does not always announce itself. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, disguised as the smallest, most underestimated object in the American economy. The Lincoln penny has passed through more hands than any other coin in U.S. history. Millions were minted, billions circulated, and yet a microscopic fraction, because of rare minting anomalies, slipped through the system, carrying errors so significant that collectors today compete fiercely to own them. The 2013 no-mint mark Lincoln cent belongs to this elite category, and the reason it matters now is because demand has exploded. When serious collectors realize scarcity exists where abundance was assumed, prices don't rise slowly, they jump. Now pause for a second and smile at the irony. A penny. The same coin people joke about leaving behind in parking lots. The same coin parents tell kids isn't worth the trouble of picking up. And yet here we are, watching high-net-worth collectors, auction houses, and private buyers treat specific pennies like blue-chip assets. Funny how the smallest things make people laugh, right up until they make someone rich. So let me ask you this, just to reset your attention. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny before spending it? The story deepens when you understand what makes the 2013 no-mint mark penny so extraordinary. This coin was never supposed to exist in the form collectors are now hunting. Minting irregularities, subtle die errors, striking anomalies, and production deviations created a version that escaped detection. These are not damaged coins. These are not worn mistakes. These are mint-born errors, the kind that transform a 1-cent piece into a 6-figure asset. And here's where fear quietly enters the room. Every year, more of these coins disappear back into circulation, lost forever. Once they're gone, they're gone. The supply shrinks. The demand grows. The window narrows. Over the last few years, the coin market has changed dramatically. Baby boomers and early retirees are liquidating estates, rediscovering collections, and turning to tangible assets that hold value beyond paper promises. Pennies, especially era pennies, have become one of the fastest moving segments in the numismatic world. Why? Because they're accessible, historically American, and still wildly misunderstood. That misunderstanding is opportunity. Right now, collectors are actively searching for authenticated 2013 no-mint Mark Lincoln cents with specific era characteristics, and when one surfaces, competition is immediate. Bidding wars don't wait. Serious money moves fast out. There's a quiet excitement that comes with realizing you don't need insider connections or Wall Street timing to participate. You need awareness. You need attention. You need to stop assuming that old and valuable mean the same thing. This penny isn't ancient. It's modern. That's what makes it dangerous, in a good way. It's still out there. It's still being found. And every time someone unknowingly spends one, the remaining examples become more desirable. Think of it like musical chairs, except the music is circulation, and the chairs are worth nearly $1 million. Here's a humorous thought that might sting just a little. Somewhere in America, someone once bought a pack of gum with a penny that could have paid off their house. That's not meant to scare you, it's meant to wake you up. Because the difference between regret and reward is knowledge. And knowledge, once you have it, changes how you look at everything. You stop seeing spare change. You start seeing potential. This is the moment when curiosity becomes action. The 2013 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is not valuable because everyone has one. It's valuable because almost no one knows what to look for, and even fewer take the time to verify what they own. Professional grading, authentication, and proper evaluation are what separate a lucky find from a life-changing result. The market doesn't reward hope, it rewards proof. And right now, verified examples are commanding extraordinary attention. This is not about chasing hype. This is about recognizing demand when it's forming, not after it's peaked. The smartest collectors move before headlines catch up. They understand that the coin market rewards patience, precision, and timing. And timing, right now, is the quiet star of this story. Because the people who act early don't just sell coins, they position themselves differently. They think differently. They live differently. So take a breath and let this land. A penny you've overlooked your entire life may hold the kind of value people spend decades chasing. That's not fantasy. That's how scarcity works. That's how markets move. And that's how wealth sometimes enters, without knocking, without noise, without warning. The only question left is whether you're paying attention. Before you dismiss this as unlikely, remember this. Every major discovery in the coin world started the same way. Someone looked closer when everyone else looked away. Someone paused instead of spending. Someone chose curiosity over assumption. And today, the 2013 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny stands as a reminder that opportunity doesn't always shine. Sometimes it's copper-colored, quiet, and waiting for the right eyes to see it. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a single penny. Not a gold bar. Not a stock certificate. Just a penny. The kind most people toss into a jar, lose in couch cushions, or leave at the checkout counter because it's not worth the trouble. But what if that penny, yes, that exact copper-colored coin, could be worth $997,000? Almost $1 million. Enough to change your lifestyle, your retirement, your legacy. And here's the unsettling part. Thousands of Americans have already handled this coin without realizing what they had. Some spent it. Some ignored it. Some lost it forever. The question is, will you be one of them? This is the story of the 2016 D. Lincoln 1-cent penny, a modern coin that shattered expectations and rewrote the rules of coin collecting. A coin so underestimated that it created one of the biggest missed wealth opportunities hiding in plain sight. And before you think, "Oh, I don't collect coins," let me stop you right there. Either did the people who sold this penny for nearly $1 million. Funny how money doesn't care whether you're a collector or not, right? In 2016, the Denver Mint produced millions of Lincoln pennies. They looked normal. They felt normal. They spent normal. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile stared back at Americans like it had for decades. Nothing flashy. Nothing suspicious. Just another penny in circulation. And that's exactly why this story is so dangerous. Because when something looks ordinary, people stop paying attention. Fear doesn't come from what we know, it comes from what we overlook. Hidden among these pennies was a rare minting error, a microscopic flaw created during the high-speed striking process at the Denver Mint. A flaw so precise, so unusual, and so difficult to replicate that it instantly caught the attention of elite collectors and auction houses. This wasn't damage. This wasn't wear. This was a true mint error, authenticated, graded, and fiercely competed for. And when it surfaced on the open market, it didn't just sell, it exploded. Collectors didn't ask, "Why is this penny so valuable?" They asked, "How many more are still out there?" That's when excitement turned into urgency. Here's where things get interesting, and slightly uncomfortable. Because while most people believe the biggest money is locked in ancient coins or dusty attics, the real truth is this: modern era coins are one of the hottest, fastest moving segments in today's coin market. Why? Because they're scarce, verifiable, and tied to a time period people remember. That emotional connection drives demand, and demand drives price. The 2016 D-penny era sits at the center of this storm. High demand, ultra-low known examples, strong auction results, and buyers with deep pockets who aren't blinking at six-figure price tags. When one specimen reached a reported market valuation of $997,000, it sent a clear message: this is not a hobby anymore. This is an asset class. And here's a question that tends to make people nervous. How many pennies have you handled since 2016 without looking at them? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Exactly. What makes this moment critical is timing. Coin markets move in cycles, and we are currently in a phase where rare US-era coins are in extraordinary demand. Wealthy collectors, investors, and funds are aggressively acquiring tangible assets. They want something real, something finite, something inflation can't erase. And guess what? A verified mint-era penny fits that description perfectly. Quick reality check. If someone offered you a lottery ticket with better odds than the Powerball, you'd at least look at it, right? Well, this is better. Because this ticket is already in your pocket. Every great story ends with a choice. And this one is no different. You can ignore this information and move on. Most people will. Or you can do what successful people always do: act before the crowd does. Because once awareness goes mainstream, the opportunity window narrows fast. Right now, people across the United States are quietly checking their change, reviewing coin jars, and pulling rolls from banks. Not out of desperation, out of strategy. Because they understand something crucial: wealth often rewards attention, not effort. Imagine discovering that one penny in your possession is worth more than a luxury home. Imagine the relief of knowing you didn't miss it. Imagine the confidence that comes from turning knowledge into leverage. This isn't about luck, it's about awareness meeting action. And let me add a little humor before we get too serious. If pennies were really worthless, billionaires wouldn't be fighting over them at auctions. Funny how that works. The market doesn't wait. Demand doesn't slow down. And history shows us one thing over and over again: the people who win are the ones who move early, quietly, and decisively. So here's the real question, and it's the one that matters most: what's sitting in your pocket right now? Because the next life-changing coin discovery in America won't come from a museum. It will come from someone who paid attention when others didn't.